My name is Dana. I'm 52 years old. And this isn't something I ever thought I'd say out loud, let alone to anyone who might actually listen. But he made me forget I was his stepmom. God, even hearing myself think it makes me feel like I've betrayed someone. Maybe myself. Maybe his father. Maybe all three of us. I wasn't always like this. I used to be certain. Grounded. I used to walk into a room and know exactly who I was: wife, stepmother, art teacher, lover. In that order. Or maybe all at once. It felt seamless back then. Natural. My husband, Rick, used to make me feel seen in the simplest of ways. His laugh at my dumb sketches. His rough hands cradling my face before bed. The way he used to slow dance with me in the kitchen, like we were still 35 and newly married. And I'd feel safe, warm, wanted. But somewhere along the way, that warmth cooled. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing about emotional decay. It creeps in like dampness in the walls. You don't notice it until something starts to smell off. At first, I told myself we were just tired. Rick worked long hours as a real estate broker, and I stayed busy with school and my night classes. We hardly had time to sit down for dinner, let alone talk about what we were feeling. Then the touches changed. Still there, but different. He'd still kiss my cheek in the morning, but it felt like checking a box. He'd reach for my hand at parties, but I stopped feeling like his date. I started feeling like his accessory. There was a night, about 6 months ago, that stuck with me more than I want to admit. We were watching TV on the couch, and I leaned my head on Rick's shoulder. Just a simple thing. I remember how cold he felt, even under a blanket. His hand rested on my thigh, like it always used to. But it didn't move. Didn't squeeze. Didn't mean anything. I tilted my face toward him, hoping he'd kiss me, really kiss me. He turned slightly, placed a dry peck on my lips, then looked back at the screen. It was a kiss, technically. But it made me feel invisible. And then, there was Caleb. Rick's son. My stepson. He moved in a year ago after finishing his master's in environmental engineering. Needed a place to stay while he looked for work and settled back in town. I was happy to help. I'd known Caleb since he was 10. I helped him with his homework, taught him how to tie a tie, even went to his high school graduation when his mother didn't show. But when he came back into this house, he wasn't a boy anymore. He was 24. Taller. Broader. Softer in his eyes, harder in his jawline. And he looked at me differently. Or maybe I was just seeing it for the first time. I tried to ignore the way my stomach flipped when he brushed past me in the kitchen. Or how warm my cheeks felt when he laughed at my jokes, genuinely laughed, in a way I hadn't heard in a long time. One night, I had fallen asleep on the couch grading student portfolios. Rick was out with clients. I woke up to a blanket being draped over me, and Caleb sitting on the coffee table across from me, his eyes gentle, his voice low. "You should sleep in your bed," he whispered. "You'll hurt your neck like that." He said it so softly, like he cared. Like he noticed. And I realized in that moment, Rick hadn't said something like that in years. Not out of neglect. But out of indifference. That moment shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. It meant too much. Because the second I stood up, Caleb steadied me with his hand on my elbow. His palm lingered, just a second too long. I didn't pull away. And that was the moment I knew, something inside me had changed. I wasn't sure what it was. But I felt it, like a shifting fault line under my skin. The kind of change you can't take back. Rick has always loved me in the way he knows how, with gestures, not words. He doesn't ask, "How are you really?" He brings home wine from that Italian place I like. He folds the laundry when I forget. He pats my hip when I pass him in the hallway, like I'm still his girl. And maybe I am, on paper. But it's not what I need. Not anymore. I need someone to ask why I've been quiet lately. I need someone to notice I've stopped singing while I cook. That I don't wear lipstick anymore, not because I'm lazy, but because I don't feel seen. Instead, Rick's hands still find me when I'm at the sink or reaching up for a plate. He still makes a move in bed when the lights go off. It's routine, almost mechanical. His way of saying, I love you, I think. But when I flinch, even slightly, he just kisses my neck harder, mistaking withdrawal for invitation. And I feel crazy. Ungrateful. Like I'm punishing a man for still wanting me. But I don't want to be wanted like that. Not if it's hollow. Not if it feels like a shortcut to something deeper we're not saying. He's a good man, Rick. He really is. A high-functioning, silver-haired, practical kind of good. A man who pays the mortgage early and grills perfectly seared steaks. But emotional intimacy? God, it's like asking him to speak a foreign language with no translator. And then there's Caleb. We were in the kitchen, a Wednesday night, I remember because I'd just gotten off a terrible Zoom call with a parent who accused me of playing favorites. I was still in my blouse and heels, hair half up, half falling. Caleb walked in, sweaty from a run, earbuds dangling from his shirt. He looked at me. Not past me. At me. You okay? He asked, pouring water into a glass. I wanted to say yes. I always do. It's easier. Safer. But something about the way he stood there, one hand on the counter, his chest still rising and falling, it made me say something else. I feel like I'm disappearing, I said, softly. He didn't laugh it off. Didn't make a joke or change the subject. He just nodded. Let the silence sit. Do you want to talk about it? He asked. And I swear, I almost cried. Just from that one sentence. Because I couldn't remember the last time someone asked me that and meant it. But before I could speak, Rick walked in. The garage door clanked behind him. He looked tired, loosened his tie, and went straight to the fridge. Hey babe, he said, barely glancing up. Got that Merlot you like? Caleb stepped away, gave us space. Rick leaned in, kissed my cheek, the same cheek Caleb had just studied moments before. And it hit me how different those touches felt. That night, Rick tried again. In bed. He turned toward me, his hands warm, familiar. But I wasn't there. My body was. But my mind had wandered to a glass of water. A soft question. A steady gaze. I didn't want it to go where it always did. But saying no felt like lighting a match in a dry field, it would burn too much. So I let it happen. I let Rick believe everything was okay. Because correcting him would have meant facing how much we drifted. The next morning, he made me coffee with too much cream, just the way I hate it but never correct him. Caleb sat across from me, reading job listings, barefoot in flannel pants, his hair messy and face freshly showered. He looked up and smiled. Sleep okay? I nodded. But deep inside, I wondered if Caleb could see the lie. That I hadn't slept. That I felt like a ghost. And that somewhere between Rick's heavy hands and Caleb's gentle questions, I was drowning in a silence I didn't know how to break. Lately, I've started to tense up before Rick even touches me. It's not fear. It's not dislike. It's hesitation. This sense that his hands are reaching for a version of me I no longer recognize, a woman I used to be when our laughter was easy, when his kiss meant connection instead of expectation. A few nights ago, I was washing my face in the bathroom. Rick came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, and pressed his mouth to my neck. It used to make me shiver, in a good way. But this time, all I felt was a small tightening in my chest. He slid his hands down toward my hips, his voice low, playful. Come to bed early tonight. I miss us. I wanted to turn around and tell him I missed us too, but not like this. Not in a way that felt like an obligation with soft lighting. Instead, I gave him a faint smile in the mirror and said, I've got a migraine. He sighed. Not angry, just disappointed. I wish I could explain to him that I want touch. But not when I'm holding my breath. Not when I feel like my only worth is in how quickly I respond to his fingers. It's confusing, being touched when your heart isn't in it, but your body doesn't want to make a scene. Even cuddling feels different now. He'll pull me against him when we watch something on Netflix, and I'll lay there, stiff, overthinking every breath. I used to melt into his chest. Now I wait for the moment to end so I can go back to reading or pretending I'm tired. And the worst part? I do want to be touched. Just, not like this. I want someone to notice the quiet sadness in my eyes before tracing my skin. I want to be asked before I'm pulled. I want to feel chosen, not claimed. The other day, Caleb and I ended up at the grocery store together. Rick had forgotten to buy garlic, and I offered to go. Caleb had just gotten back from an interview and needed air. It was so simple. Walking the aisles. Laughing about how Rick always buys the wrong pasta. I caught myself enjoying it too much, the ease, the banter, the way Caleb slowed his pace to match mine. In the produce section, I reached for a bag of spinach too quickly, and it fell from the shelf. He caught it before it hit the ground. Our fingers brushed. Not by accident. I froze. So did he. For a second, the air between us shifted, thickened. He cleared his throat, handed me the bag. His fingers lingered on mine. And I didn't pull away. That night, Rick made his usual Thursday chili. I sat at the table, distracted, stirring mine. He walked past and smacked my butt like he always does when he's in a playful mood. I didn't laugh. I flinched. He noticed. Hey. What's that face? Nothing, I mumbled. Didn't seem like nothing. I'm just not in the mood, Rick. He looked at me for a beat too long. Then nodded. Right. You haven't been in the mood for weeks. He walked away, the spoon clattering in the sink louder than it needed to. And I just sat there, staring into a bowl of lukewarm chili, thinking. Why does everything have to turn into sex? Why can't love be a quiet question, like, are you okay? Why can't it be noticing the lipstick I stopped wearing, or the way I'm always the last one to bed now? Why can't it be spinach caught midair, and hands that ask instead of take? It started with something small. We were all sitting at the dinner table, me, Rick, and Caleb, eating takeout because Rick had forgotten to defrost the chicken. Again. The conversation was harmless. Caleb was talking about a job offer from a firm in Denver, a good one. Full benefits. Great pay. I smiled, told him how proud I was. Rick grunted between bites and mumbled, guess we'll finally get our space back. It was a joke. I think. But Caleb's smile faltered for just a second. And my fork paused midair. There was a long, awkward silence. And something inside me cracked. I like having him here, I said too quickly. Too defensively. Rick glanced up. I didn't say I didn't. No, but you made it sound like he's just, in the way. Rick set his fork down. Dana, it's been over a year. He's a grown man. He should have his own place. Caleb looked uncomfortable. I should have let it go. But I didn't. He's been helping around the house, Rick. He's not some teenager crashing on our couch. I never said he was, Rick said, holding up his hands. Why are you so defensive? And there it was. That tone. Like I was the unreasonable one. Like I was being overly emotional again. Because, I snapped, I feel like you don't even see him. Or me, for that matter. The room went still. Rick blinked. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I stood up from the table. It means you barely talk to me unless you want something. It means I'm sick of being touched like a habit instead of a person. It means I miss being wanted, not out of routine, but out of real, actual desire. My voice broke on the last word. I hadn't meant to cry. Not in front of both of them. But the tears came anyway, sharp, hot, impossible to stop. Caleb stood quickly. Dana, I held up a hand. No. Don't. Just let me finish. I turned to Rick, my chest rising with every breath. Do you even like me anymore? Or am I just convenient? The woman who keeps the fridge stocked and the laundry folded and doesn't ask too many questions? Rick's face flushed. You're being dramatic. That word. Dramatic. It made something inside me scream. God, Rick. You always do this. You brush me off, make me feel like I'm the crazy one for needing more than your hands and half kisses. I'm not a damn appliance, I'm your wife. The silence that followed was suffocating. Rick stood, slowly, his voice tight. I didn't realize being with me was such a burden. I didn't say that, I whispered, already regretting everything. He shook his head, walked past me, and disappeared down the hall. The bedroom door clicked shut. I sank into a chair at the table, my hands trembling. Caleb stayed where he was, unsure of what to do. I didn't mean for that to happen, I said quietly. He nodded. I know. I feel like I'm screaming underwater and no one can hear me. Caleb walked over, crouched beside my chair. He didn't touch me. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then softly, he asked, when was the last time you felt understood? I looked at him. Really looked. And I didn't say Rick's name. The guilt hit me instantly. Like a brick. What kind of woman breaks down like this in front of her stepson? But I wasn't thinking about roles anymore. I was thinking about how lonely I'd become. How easy it is to go invisible inside your own life. How sometimes, one quiet question can shake you more than 100 careless touches. I spent the rest of the evening on the back porch. Just me and the night sky. Trying to calm my breath, trying to make sense of the tornado I'd just unleashed. Inside, Rick didn't come find me. Neither did Caleb. And honestly, I didn't know which silence hurt more. The days that followed were painfully quiet. Not cold. Not cruel. Just empty. Rick didn't bring up the fight. He didn't slam doors or sleep on the couch. But he also didn't reach for me. Not in the hallway. Not at night. Not even out of habit. He moved around the house like a guest in his own marriage, polite, reserved, and deliberately distant. He'd nod when I walked in the room. Pass me the salt. Ask what we needed from the store. But it felt like we were two coworkers in a house neither of us wanted to leave first. And Caleb? He kept his distance too. He was careful now. Thoughtful in a different way. He waited until I left the room before entering it. Avoided prolonged eye contact. Spoke to me like I was a porcelain plate someone else had cracked and he was trying not to break further. I missed him. God, I missed them both, for different reasons. I missed the version of Rick who used to rest his hand on my thigh under the table, just because. I missed the way he used to laugh, not politely, not quickly, but with his whole chest, with his whole heart. And I missed Caleb's questions. His steady way of looking at me like I wasn't fading. Like I was still worth listening to. But I didn't know how to close the distance I had created. I didn't even know if I should. One morning, I found Rick sitting in the living room, staring at the TV while the news droned on about a city council meeting. His coffee was untouched. I walked in, slowly, unsure of what to say. Morning, I offered. He nodded. Morning. I waited a beat. You okay? He shrugged. Fine. It wasn't anger in his tone. It was weariness. Like a man who'd stopped expecting anything deeper. I sat across from him and stared at the mug in his hand. He didn't notice. Or he did, but didn't care. And that's when it hit me, he was hurting too. He just didn't know how to show it. We were both drowning. But in different oceans. Later that day, I passed Caleb in the hallway. Our eyes met briefly, just long enough for something unspoken to flicker between us. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but he turned into his room before I could. I stood there, hand on the banister, and realized I had no idea who I was to either of them anymore. Wife? Stepmother? Stranger? Guilt clung to me like perfume I couldn't wash off. I kept replaying that dinner. The fight. My tears. Caleb kneeling beside me like I was someone worth comforting. He shouldn't have had to witness that. It wasn't fair to him. It wasn't fair to Rick. And yet, that moment on the porch, alone with my breath and my shame, I had felt more alive than I had in months. Not because I'd said everything right, but because I'd finally said something true. Now, the truth just sat between us all. Like a guest we couldn't ask to leave. I stood in the kitchen that evening, staring at my reflection in the microwave door. Tired eyes. Tense jaw. A woman I barely recognized. I missed being loved well. I missed being seen. And I knew I had to make a decision soon. Either fight for what we had, or walk away from the shell of what we'd become. Rick came to bed late that night. I was already lying down, pretending to sleep, my back to him. I felt the mattress dip gently under his weight. For a moment, he didn't move, just sat there, as if deciding something. Then, slowly, I felt his hand rest on my hip. No urgency. No agenda. Just contact. Dana, he whispered. I opened my eyes. Yeah? I don't know how to fix this, he said. His voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. But I know I don't want to lose you. I swallowed hard. I don't want to be touched to be reminded I exist, Rick. I want to be known again. He sighed. I didn't realize I'd stopped trying. We lay there in silence. Not everything needed to be solved right then. But at least the ice had cracked. He didn't pull me into him, like he normally would. He didn't kiss my neck or reach for more. Instead, he just slid closer until our backs barely touched. That silence, that stillness, felt more intimate than anything we'd shared in weeks. The next morning, I woke up to find him gone to work, but a note sat on my pillow. I've been thinking about what you said. I want to learn how to love you better, not just the way I know how. Let's talk tonight? It wasn't a grand gesture. But it was a beginning. Later that afternoon, I passed Caleb in the hallway again. This time, he didn't turn away. Hey, he said softly. Hey, I replied. There was a pause. Then he nodded toward the kitchen. I'm making tea. Want some? I hesitated. Then nodded. Sure. We sat across from each other, steam curling between us. It was quiet. But it didn't feel heavy. I'm thinking of taking that job in Denver, he said. I nodded, my throat tightening. It's a good offer. He searched my face. You think it's time I go? No, I said honestly. I think it's time we all figure out where we belong. There was a long pause. He nodded. And for the first time in days, he smiled. Not the flirtatious kind. Not the confused kind. Just, kind. As I stood to leave, he reached out and touched my hand. Not in longing. Not in confusion. Just goodbye. And it was enough. That night, Rick and I sat on the couch, side by side, holding hands in silence. A beginning. Not a fix. But maybe, something honest. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be sitting here, talking like this, feeling like this, I would have laughed. Or maybe cried. Because I thought I knew who I was. I thought marriage, routine, and a steady love were enough. And for a long time, they were. Until one day, they weren't. Until the silence between kisses became louder than the kisses themselves. I used to believe that a lack of fighting meant everything was fine. That a quick kiss goodbye, a dinner shared, a hand on my hip while I stirred the sauce, all meant connection. But I've learned something since then. Touch isn't intimacy. Sex isn't love. And silence isn't always peace. When Caleb moved back in, I didn't see him as a man. He was my stepson. My husband's boy. The kid who used to wear mismatched socks and spill cereal on my lesson plans. But something shifted. And not in the way you might think. It wasn't about lust, not really. It was about being noticed. Being heard. Being looked at like I mattered. He asked me how I felt. And he listened when I answered. That kind of attention. That kind of softness. It's disarming when you've gone years without it. For a moment, just a breath of a season in my life, I forgot I was his stepmom. Not because I wanted something forbidden. But because, for the first time in years, someone saw me as more than a role to fill. And that terrified me. Because it made me realize how invisible I'd let myself become. How much I'd settled into the background of my own story, wife, teacher, mother, caretaker, everything but a woman still hungry to be known. Rick and I are trying. Not in the dramatic, movie-ending kind of way. There were no roses. No teary confessions under the rain. Just a quiet, awkward conversation over leftovers, and the decision to stop pretending. We talk more now. About the hard things. About the fact that I've felt unwanted. About how physical touch, without emotional closeness, made me feel like a body instead of a person. And about how Rick didn't know, truly didn't, that I had been drifting away. That's the thing about long relationships. They don't break from one big betrayal. They dissolve from 1,000 moments of not looking each other in the eye. I had a choice to make. I could have let that ache pull me further into Caleb's orbit, into the comfort of attention and youth and soft looks that made me feel 20 again. But I knew what that path would mean. It wasn't love. It was loneliness dressed up as desire. And I wanted more than that. I still do. Caleb took the job in Denver. He left 2 weeks ago. We hugged at the airport, a long, quiet kind of hug. One that said thank you and I'm sorry and I'll always remember this, without ever saying the words. We haven't spoken since. And that's okay. Some people enter your life not to stay, but to remind you of who you are when the lights go out. Rick held me that night. For a long time. No expectations. No plans. Just two people who'd broken something and were slowly learning how to build again, brick by honest brick. So if you're listening to this and feeling like love is slipping through your fingers, don't ignore it. Don't swallow it. Don't wait until the ache turns to anger. Speak. Cry if you have to. Tell the truth, not for them, but for you. Because you deserve to be touched with meaning. You deserve to be asked how you're feeling, and really be heard. And if, for a moment, someone makes you forget who you think you are, maybe it's just life reminding you of who you've always been underneath.